Wow, I love to be here and to see this stage full. Wow, thank you. We're talking about an amazing thing today. And I don't know if you know a little bit about open banking. Maybe if in the audience can tell us open banking, open finance, have you heard about it? If yes, can you raise your hand, please? Okay, super. So this will be a great panel, Jose Luis. You will be the first one. Tell us about open finance and what's the difference on open banking and why last year we talked about open banking and this year we're talking about open finance.
Thank you, Janma. So basically, open banking is when an end user gives consent. Consent means that gives permission to any third party. The third party can be a fintech, a bank, e-commerce company, to access payments, data, and financial services from a bank or for any financial company. So basically, I mean, you can gather all the data from all the banks in a single app, and you can create new services that allow the end user to create new credit scores, better financial services like financial apps, et cetera, in a single place, gathering all the information, all the payments, etc. The difference between open data, open banking, and open finance is that open data is all the data from all the country. Open finance is the data from different financial services, and open banking is the data from banks. So at the beginning, it started with open banking. I mean, only big banks were allowed to create APIs to share data. But now, like new regulations, like in Brazil, like insurance companies are forced to also create open banking APIs. And legislations like in Colombia, telecommunication companies, other types of companies also have to share the data and share the information.
Thank you, Jose Luis. Like, saying it technically, it's amazing, but one of the things that I don't know if you know, but it's 60% of our populations in Latin America are unbanked. So this means that we'll shape a new opportunities for a lot of people that doesn't have banks and doesn't have financial inclusion. So that's one of the great things about open finance also. So Robert, tell us, with your extensive experience, could you share insights on the global impact and benefits of implementing open finance?
Thank you, Janma. Yeah, I think we have to recognize that it is a really big phenomenon. So around the world, 80 countries implementing open banking in some form. So it's already affecting tens of thousands of banks globally. The benefits for those banks are the ability to deliver superior services and products to end consumers and drive revenues off the back of that. Open banking processes also open up new business model opportunities, that be banking as a service or embedded finance. The beneficiaries of a lot of this innovation are consumers who receive products with more control and choice. And also, as Janma said, it can also open up access. So things like alternative lending based off open banking processes can improve financial inclusion.
Can you give an example?
Yeah.
So something that you're doing in another part of the world?
Yeah, I'd love to. So between the companies represented here, in particular Finerio and Ozone, we're working with a Visa product called Consumer Transaction Score that uses payment-based data to provide an alternate credit profile for those that are not covered by credit bureaus. So it's a great way of bringing more new segments into the financial system.
Gracias, Robert. Jose Luis, how can we design an open finance framework? Can you tell us that actively encourages participation from all actors in the financial sector? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So basically, I mean, how open banking was taught in Europe, I mean, Europe has the first open banking law in the world, was like a punishment for banks. Basically, what they did was like, the banks have to create open banking APIs for free. I mean, they didn't tell them basically how to create these APIs. So the banks, they spend like millions of pounds and euros creating these APIs. And it was meant for fintechs to compete for banks. So basically, they have to invest a lot of money in APIs that they have to be free, and they were meant for fintechs to compete with banks. So basically, it was a punishment, and the incentives were not aligned between banks, fintechs, etc. So what happened, it was that the banks, they just basically did the minimum, or basically some of the APIs actually didn't work. And it was like the vision of like so many banks around the world. Like it's a pure punishment. It's something that actually they will lose users if they create open banking APIs. But actually, what really happened is that banks, they didn't lose users with open banking. Actually, there's no one success case of banks losing users with a fintech or with another bank. Actually, banks that are invested in open banking, they are gaining new users because they are putting financial services in different apps, and they are gaining users in where the financial services are most used. So basically, to align the incentives in an ecosystem, we have like two worlds. First, the demand side, and then the supply side. The supply side is all financial institutions that offer APIs. Basically, they have to have like low cost of operations. So, I mean, they can afford to operate an open banking system. This can be done if like several financial institutions share the same infrastructure, because the open banking infrastructure is the same for all financial services. And they have to be able to charge for these APIs. Like most open banking laws, they don't allow banks to charge for these APIs. We truly believe that they have to be allowed to charge for these APIs. And from the demand side is like all the companies, banks, fintechs, supermarkets that will consume the APIs. They have to be able to first use the APIs. The APIs have to work. That's the basic thing. And secondly, I mean, the APIs have to be done and created, so they allow use cases to be created. Most open banking APIs, they just allow like few use cases to be done. If we, at the beginning, we think about what are the necessities of, for example, Guatemala, and then we create the open banking APIs, that will be like a smarter way of creating those APIs. And if we join like the incentives of the supply side and the demand side, we can create a smarter ecosystem.
Gracias, José Luis. And adding to that, Javier, tell us, what is the strategy in Banco Industrial and how you're keeping up with this new relevant open finance strategies in the world, and how you're putting that on the local map?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's important to say that since we're making an individual effort, we're still working in open banking, and the use cases that we're implementing are the embedded finance and opening our infrastructure and different products. The thing is that our clients are looking right now better services and products that can only be created through collaboration and integration of different data, but we don't have a place where we can test different use cases. We don't have a place where we can share data and test what the client wants. So this is something that the country is lacking from, but our strategy right now is focusing in giving this, opening our platform, because we believe that through these open systems, we can go through new segments that we can, that by ourselves, we won't be able to reach them. Later, I can give you some examples about it, but we now have a more empowered client that are requesting to have the control of the data. And since a lot of years, the banks are having the control of the client's finance, so it's time to give them back the control from that.
And I can imagine that it's not easy also in the mindset of all the leaders to do, like in a cultural shift, they're living also inside of it. That's not easy, you know?
Well, mindset is something that we have to work every day, not only for open banking, but for innovation.
All the challenges that you have, for sure.
Yeah.
That's great, but for sure, that's a big applause for Banco Industrial when they're doing it, because this is not easy to be on that map. Gracias. So, Hugh, considering your background in leading open banking strategies in the UK, Brazil, and South Arabia. What do you see as the key advancements of open financing in Latin America?
Yeah, so Jose Luis said, the UK was one of the first markets to implement open banking in a really structured and regulatory-driven way. And I think 5 years on, it's looking really successful. Adoption is good. The volume of payments are growing really well. The ecosystem's huge. Banks are starting to drive premium and commercial services beyond.
Can you share some numbers?
Yeah, so there's, in terms of numbers, so there's well over 1 billion API calls every single month. In fact, in Brazil, the numbers are much higher already. The number of payments is effectively sort of doubling every quarter. The growth is starting to really accelerate. But as Jose Luis said, it was actually a pretty tough start in the UK because everything had to be designed from scratch. I led the development of the open banking ecosystem in the UK, and it was a tough battle to get all of the banks and the fintechs working together and partnering really well. As we look around the world now, I think every new market is doing it faster and better. I think Brazil, we've seen an incredible acceleration through a combination of a central bank with a really strong ambition and vision, driving an approach which was based upon really strong standards. So every bank implements the same structure of API. Because if every bank does their own thing, it's exceptionally costly and complex for everybody to connect. So they had a strong regulator and a real focus on standards, and not just having standards, but making sure every bank went through conformance and certification. So the quality of the APIs is much better. But if we look at what's happened in Saudi Arabia, again, I think there's some more learning. So the regulator started with a really big vision. So they have this vision to transform the whole society and economy by 2030. And they see open finance as a key pillar to do this. So a secure, consent-based financial services economy they see as being completely transformational for the industry, but also for consumers and businesses. So they started with a big vision. And as a result of that, they designed the open finance framework in a way where there's really clear incentives for the banks to do it well. So use cases that are specifically focused on helping the banks distribute products and drive new revenue streams. And that creates an incentive to do a really good job. And then they've created a really ambitious program to accelerate the number of fintechs and third parties in the ecosystem. So they're bringing in a whole load of investment and new companies really quickly. So each market's learning and doing it better and better and better.
And if I understand well, it's better that all the financial sector comes before that the regulation, no? What do you think about that?
So I think regulation kind of plays two roles here. So it's a really powerful catalyst. I spent most of my career working in a bank, and there's always amazing strategies, but actually starting can sometimes be really hard. And getting every bank in a market to start at the same time can be hard. So regulation can be a great catalyst, and it's also there to ensure the end customers are protected. So if you're creating an ecosystem which is about access to data and money, it needs to be secure. Trust is essential. So I think there's a really important role for regulation, but regulation should not define the end state. It should be a catalyst and some guardrails. So I think in every market there'll be a combination of some form of regulation to create protection, but it should be broad and far-reaching to allow the banks to expose ever more interesting APIs that can help grow their business and deliver great digital financial services that can be embedded in third-party experiences.
Super. How do you see that, Javier, talking on that topic?
Well, I think we're in advantage with the regulator because were implemented before we regulated. For example, in Europe, they took it like a punishment. So we can take a propositive way, so we can collaborate first with equal standards, and after that, later when we test the use cases, when we know and when we learn, we can push the standards and the regulation to the regulator.
And by the way, I agree with
Please,
that.
please.
I agree with that completely. I think there's an amazing opportunity in Guatemala to effectively prove what great looks like and create a benchmark for the region. And in doing so, it makes the regulators' role easy. So if it's implemented well using global standards and best practice, actually the regulator's job becomes really easy. It's just making sure there's some protection, but the foundations are already built. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity.
It's not the same to show it in a PowerPoint, to show it with a POC.
As a real case.
A real case.
Okay, super. I love that what you're talking about. But Robert, how do you see the regulatory challenges evolving in the context of open finance? And what strategies can be employed to navigate it?
Thank you. And I think we've touched on some key points already here. From my perspective, and from what I've seen in the region over the last couple of years, I think just pure complexity has been a challenge for regulators, because open finance can be a very, very broad concept, new, involves balancing different, sometimes conflicting interests, and then there's this orchestration that kind of Hugh alluded to between the rules of the regulator and a fairly technical set of standards. But I think Central America is in a really good position for having not regulated to this point. They can become a follower, like a smart follower, and learn in a smart way from markets like the UK that have got some things wrong, corrected some things, and had some successes. And also, there are now global standards established in open banking. So I think Central America is in a really good place, particularly Guatemala.
So tell us, guys, after a year of our first panel that we started our conversation, Guatemala will make an important first step forwards, implementing open finance with the execution of a commercial sandbox. Can you tell us more about it? Who wants to jump in?
Yes, last time we were here, there was a lot of interest. Like many players really wanted to do it right, to advance in this open banking. And now, like the FinTech Association, the Bank Association, we are all gathering to first do a workshop. The workshop is important because we have to make sure that everyone understands the basics of open banking. Because there are like many things like papers that are actually not related to what really happens in real life. So first we have a workshop, then we have a sandbox where like companies, fintechs, banks, they can really try how open banking works in real life, test the technology, create use cases. And after that, I mean, the idea is there's like a global understanding in the country of open banking, we gather all together to design how the open banking should be done in Guatemala. This is a great opportunity of doing the best-in-class open banking. Guatemala has the best open banking in the world, better than Brazil, better designed than Europe, and this is like the best timing for doing so, because we have learnings from other countries, we have new technology that can accelerate new use cases of open banking, and we can focus the whole open banking efforts on real problems of Guatemala.
Gracias, José Luis. A big applause for that, because it's not easy to get to that point. And I don't know if you know, guys, but Asociación de FinTech of Guatemala started because of Volcano Summit 2018 in a meetup. 4 startups came with the idea to gather together, and now they're leading all these projects. So it's amazing how this is happening and how everything goes with Visa, with Finerio, Ozone, and banks like Banco Industrial being in the table to talk about it and to be open to that. So, based on that context, in cultivating collaboration among diverse stakeholders within the financial industry, what strategies or practices you think are more important to create a harmonious ecosystem for open finance initiatives? I will pass to Robert this one, and then to Hugh.
Thanks, Janma. And I think it's another one we've touched on briefly. But yeah, one of the issues we've seen in other markets, whether it's Europe or other parts of the region, is participation from all stakeholders, particularly bank engagement. So there's an opportunity to learn from that and further align incentives. So I think it's really a question of thinking through balanced economic models to sustain the ecosystem.
Yeah, so when I think about this, I think you need to think at two levels. So there's a national level, and then what's right for each of the banks to help drive their strategy and help create the right environment for better digital customer experiences. So at a national level, I think it is essential and critical to have strong standards. So this does two things. It makes sure the ecosystem is secure and customers' data and money is secure, but it also makes the ecosystem more efficient, because if every API is built in the same way, it's much easier for everyone to connect. So I think standards are key. And another thing that is probably an important thought process at a national level is, what are the desired outcomes? So it can be implemented in different ways to achieve different end outcomes. So if there's a real objective around increasing financial inclusion or driving increased investment into the market and growing the economy and talent creation, the objectives can help then define, well, what are the right use cases to really drive at a national level to ensure good adoption and the fastest benefit and impact. So there's some questions at a national level. And then I think for each of the banks, it's really sort of thinking through if APIs will be a core channel for how they engage with customers and build embedded financial experiences, the question is, well, what's the right strategy? Each bank has a different focus, different customer segments, different products. So the answer shouldn't look the same. I think it's important for each bank to go through that thought process of what does good look like for us? Therefore, what are the right sort of value-adding APIs for us to expose? But then with that national level consideration around the standards and the objectives that will help get to a much better outcome for Guatemala.
Mm-hmm. Javier, you want to add up?
Yeah, I think that a strategy that works for almost everything is to start small and learn from that. That's one thing that I can say.
You try, you learn, and you see if that happens or not.
And when we have something that is so complex that open banking, we have to do like very small things. And from the bank side, I think that it's very important that we have the equal conditions for all the actors, so the banks can feel safe to share and get data from the other actors. In our way, we won't have the right incentive to enter and collaborate with this thing. And for me, the third thing, the third thing can be like think outside the box, because we don't want to collaborate to create like a new kind of credit or something like that. We need to create disruptive services for our clients, not only PFM or something like that. And that's why I think, and I really believe that banking is not only, the future of banking is not only digital, but it's also open.
Gracias. Big applause for that. That's a not so easy mindset. Jose Luis, you want to add up there something?
Yes, I mean, I will add up more about the cooperation side. I mean, the hardest part of creating a great open banking ecosystem is to coordinate between banks, between fintechs, that like everyone like has the same vision. Because, for instance, there are many like APIs that like banks can like do by themselves, and it can work. But most of the use cases, I mean, all the banks, they have to do the APIs, and all those APIs, they have to work and like work together and have to be targeted to use cases that actually like fintechs, other banks, e-commerce companies can use. And the only way to achieve that is through cooperation, and that's actually the hardest part. In Europe, there was a directive where everyone, and in Brazil and most countries, each bank has to do some standards. Each one has to have a different open banking strategy, and the reach of open banking is very limited. I mean, the amount of open bankings in each country, they are person-to-person payments, only transactional data from the data side, and things these APIs are not enough to create use cases. And actually, not all use cases are relevant in each country. So, I mean, if all the interested parties gather together, they coordinate, they create infrastructure to reduce cost, they decide to go further beyond the regulation. I mean, that's super strong. And if we can do that in Guatemala, and we're in the right path of doing that, coordinating the FinTech Association and the Bank Association, I mean, the kind of things that we will be able to do are way beyond what has been done in Europe, what has been done in the United States. And that's super, super exciting.
Someone else? Let's wrap it up. Hugh, you want to say something?
Yeah, I've been in banking industry for 27 years now. I truly believe this shift to a secure, consent-based, open API-powered industry is the biggest change I've seen in my career. I think we've not seen any of the real impact of it yet. This is creating a foundation which
The infrastructure.
Sorry?
The infrastructure.
Exactly. It's creating a foundation. It's creating an infrastructure for secure consent-based access that will go way beyond all of the different use cases we talk about now. It'll go way beyond just banking products or finance products. In Australia, the consumer data right already has sectors such as telco and energy on the roadmap. So we're at the beginning of something that is truly transformational. But it's a long journey. And I completely agree with what Javier said. I think start small, start doing things. But actually, to do this at a national level doesn't need to be anywhere near as big or complex as we've seen in markets like the UK and Brazil. Lift and drop global best practice and existing technologies. And this can happen really quickly. So I think, genuinely, I think this is the biggest opportunity for innovation and value creation in, I guess, the industry globally that I've ever seen. So it's a really exciting time.
Love this. So great applause for each one of them. It's a great project that you're doing. That you will tell us more about it. But that sandbox will change Guatemala, and it's changing Guatemala, will change Central America, and with this, we're gonna have more financial inclusion. So that's amazing. That's an amazing opportunity for a lot of people. So I love to see that at Volcano, we see this type of projects that starts with a little bit of seed, and 1 year after, we see a great project that is starting. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here. Gracias.
Thank you.